One of the most popular features within N8N is going to be the AI agent. In fact, if you take a look at any popular workflow that is posted on social media, has a decent amount of shares, you'll see that that workflow typically evolves around an AI agent that someone has utilized. Now, AI agents can change quite a bit depending on the workflow, and there's a lot of different settings involved with them, right? So my goal in today's video is to get you guys started with your first AI agent. We're going to talk about some of the different settings, talk about the different components involved with it as well, talk about whether you want to use a manual trigger or a chat component trigger, and go through some examples so that way you take a look at an AI agent and you know what is going on. That being said, it's going to be a little bit of a lengthy video. And if you want to see a full video talking about AI agents with the mixture of tools, that is going to be the next one in this N8N playlist that I am developing. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at building your first AI agent, and hopefully you'll understand how they work right after this video. All right, guys, so we're here in N8N. Let's start. What I'm going to do is click add first step, and then over here, what we're going to look for is our AI agent. Now, typically you want to start off with a trigger, but the AI agent, if you throw it in without anything else, it's going to automatically create a chat trigger. It saves you 5 or 10 seconds if you want to just chat, but regardless, you have that. And then you'll get put into this screen as well at the same side. Now, one thing I would just recommend that you set up right off the bat is to require an output format, right? So now you can set up an output parser in the canvas to specify the output you require. And that's specifically if you are looking for an output after your AI agent. I use this quite a bit, so I just put that in over here. And then you'll see that we have 4 different display options, right? So without it, you can go back over here and you can see it goes down into 3. But if you require a specific format, right? Especially if you're using JSON, set up that over here. And we'll cover the output parser here in a second, but I do use the output parser quite a bit, and you have that ability. Now, technically you could talk about output within your prompt, so you don't necessarily need an output parser, but I would just recommend that you keep it if you want to have your output being in a specific format. Okay, so now we have this, right? Our trigger is when a chat message is received, right? And you can open the chat, and we'll cover that in a second. And then you have your AI agent. So let's talk about some of the different settings and different things that are over here. So the first side of things is going to be the chat model that you want to use, right? So what you do is you just click this plus icon over here and you get a ton of different options. Now, since most people watching this video, I assume, are pretty familiar with OpenAI, we'll use OpenAI for this video, but I do want to call out on one that is quite interesting. And this is OpenRouter, right? What OpenRouter allows you to do is switch between different types of chat models. So there is a ton of use cases for that. And I plan on making a separate video talking about OpenRouter within N8N here in the future, but just know that that option is available for you. But in this video, we'll be covering OpenAI. So I'm going to click on the OpenAI over here. You want to set up credentials into your account. Now, I'm not going to cover that in this video, right? And if you guys want to see how to set up OpenAI to N8N, happy to do that in another video, but you have that over here. One thing to also call out is these options. So we'll cover each of these options in this video, right? All of these, I believe there's 8 in general. So kind of explain what these are and show you some use cases in a bit, but these are over here and you can add that into your chat model. Okay, your next one is going to be your memory. So this tells you essentially how many messages to remember. And I'll just go over here, and I like using just simple memory like this, right? So click into simple memory, and then you have the context window length. And it says over here how many past interactions the model receives as context. And you can switch that number, right? By default, it is 5, right? You can switch this over here to 10. You can switch it to 20, right? Choose the number that you want. Do know that there are expenses associated with that, right? With the more of a window length, you are going to be spending more money, but it defaults at 5, right? So that way it can remember some of the past conversation that you've had specifically over here. Okay, so that is the simple memory. You'll see that. Up next are tools. Now there are a ton of tools out there, right? So if you just click this plus icon, you can see everything that is available. So essentially what you can do is you can feed a tool to an AI agent and allow it to do a task, right? And there's a ton of them, right? One that's really cool is calling another N8N workflow. So you can actually have another workflow already built and you can call that as a tool with an AI agent. Now that is way more complicated than we're going to cover in this video. In fact, it's going to be way later in this series. You also have vector stores. So we'll be talking about RAG also in another video, but there are your vector stores over here. And then you jump down into other tools, right? And you can see that there are quite a bit of tools, right? There wouldn't be enough time to talk about every single tool, but maybe we'll do a video covering, 10 or 20 popular tools, show you some use cases, or do individual videos on some of the things that are available over here, right? But there's just so many, and you have that option on that side of things, right? But yeah, so you can also set up multiple tools. You don't necessarily need to just have one tool at a time. So you have that option as well. And if we go over here, right, you can also set up HTTP requests as a tool, right? And that goes in over here, right? You could do a get, you could do a post. You have all these other different options as well. So again, more kind of advanced use cases, but you can set up multiple tools, right? And you can see that plus has not gone away. I'm just going to delete this for now. And then we're going to also talk about the output parser. Now, where the output parser is pretty nice is let's say you want to have your AI agent do some sort of task, and then you want to output something in a specific format. Let's say a specific type of JSON format, right? So you can actually specify that within your output parser instead of having to put that specifically in a prompt. Again, prompt is okay to use, but you might as well use the output parser because that is already built in over here. So all you have to do is click this plus icon on this side of things. And then what you want to do is say structured output parser, right? Return data in a defined JSON format. And if you're not familiar with JSON, right, it's actually quite easy. It is really, really important to know the basics of JSON if you are going to be working with AI agents, N8N. But yeah, so this is JSON over here. And you can essentially see we have something over here, right? We have a colon, and then we have other text over here, like we have cities, and then we have everything that is in a list. And I'm happy to make a JSON video if you guys would like to see it. I know I actually am making one on my Python Pandas series. I know that doesn't do anything for those who don't know Python and aren't really interested in it, specifically on the N8N side, but I do plan on making that because JSON is used quite a bit when you're working with AI. So there is that side of things. Okay, so you have your structured output parser that you can have over here, right? I showed you the memory on the side of things if we're going through chat messages. We have our OpenAI model over here. So let's just walk through kind of an example of using chat text messages. And then what we'll do is we'll go through all these different options so that way you have an understanding of what they are and what would be the specific use case on that. And I think you'll be learning quite a bit. All right, so now I'm going to just jump into the OpenAI model and let's talk about some of these different options. Now, the first option we are going to be taking a look at is going to be tokens. So we can go over here and click maximum number of tokens. Now, why this is -1? Now, -1 does not mean we have -1 tokens, right? This essentially means there's no limit on the amount of tokens. So essentially, how you calculate tokens, and there's different calculators out there, right? It's not exactly per word. And there's a fixed price for the specific tokens. Each model has different representations of how many tokens it can input in and then as well as output. So you'll have to take a look at the documents associated with it. But if you go over here to like OpenAI's pricing, right? Since we're using O4 mini, you can see input cost associated with it, $4 for 1 million tokens. Output is $16 for 1 million tokens, right? And then also over here on this release, which I didn't even realize GPT-4o is about to be 1 year old, which is crazy. I remember making a YouTube video on it. It talks about over here, the model has a context window of 128,000 tokens, supports up to 16K output tokens per request, has knowledge up to October 2023. We'll talk about knowledge again in probably another video, but one thing to watch out for is not all of these models have up-to-date information. So you're going to have to use other tools or other resources to get up-to-date information. That's where something like a Perplexity would be pretty powerful. But again, we'll cover that another day. So right? Just take a look at the docs. It'll tell you what the maximum is allowed. And there's also calculators online. So like, for example, I typed this up in a little bit of previous version of recording this. I decided just to have this already here, but it says I'm currently recording an N8N video that costs 8 tokens. So you can see like tokens are very cheap for what you get, but you can also limit them here if you want to. All right, so I'm just going to delete that. And then next thing we're going to take a look at over here is going to be using temperature. Now, there is an option of either using temperature, which is your sampling temperature over here, or something called top P. Now, I use sampling temperature, and you can take a look at the definition, right? So it controls the randomness. Lowering result is less random completions. As the temperature approaches 0, the model will become deterministic. Or you could use something called top P, which controls the diversity via nucleus sampling. 0.5 means half of all likelihood weighted options are considered. We generally recommend altering this or temperature. So at least when I first started learning a little bit about AI, everyone used temperature. So that's what I am familiar with in comparison to top P. So you have that, right? Up next, you have another option over here, which is going to be your response format. Now, I already showed you if you're using JSON, right? You might as well go over here and use the structured output parser. So I don't use this one as much on here. Let me go back over here. I accidentally clicked the wrong thing, but that is going to be your response format. Personally, I'd rather just go over here. Next option, what you have over here is your max retries. It tells you how many times you want to try a failed request before essentially it stops working, right? So that's your max retries. This is max number of retries to attempt. Okay, next over here. So we talked about maximum number of tokens. We talked about response format. Let's take a look at some of these other ones. So let's look at frequency penalty. So this talks about using the same phrases over and over again. So the exact definition is positive values penalize new tokens based on their existing frequency in the text so far, decreasing the model's likelihood to repeat the same line verbatim, right? This would be something if you're crafting types of text or documents, you would want to probably mess with your frequency penalty. So you have that over there. You also have something similar called a presence penalty. So if I go over here to the presence penalty, it's a positive values penalize new tokens based on whether they appear in the text so far, increasing the model's likelihood to talk about new topics. All right. We have something called a timeout. So we'll go over here and click onto that. And timeout on this side is the maximum amount of time a request is allowed to take in milliseconds. Now, this model is pretty fast, so you got to remember that. And also, one thing to look at is your millisecond conversion, right? And I believe there's 1,000 milliseconds into a second, milliseconds to second. And you can go over here, and I'll just double check my math because I don't want to be off, but I was right. So you can see 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second. So if we go back into over here, right, this is 60,000, which essentially means it's going to be 1 minute. So again, just do your math on that if you want to set up a timeout on there, and you have that option. Let's take a look at anything else. So we talked about frequency penalty, maximum number of tokens. We talked about response, presence. We talked about sampling, timeout, max retries, as well as top P. So we covered all of those different options that were in there. We talked about our simple memory and how we can change the window length. We talked about output parser on here. And then we talked about how you can use different tools over here at your own disposal. So what I think we should do now is take a look at this, use a chat message, and then we'll also take a look at using some of the tools and then tweaking some of these different options that I went through. All right, so let's get going on some test cases. What I did first is I removed the output parser over here. I'll show you how we can use this here in a second. But to get started with chat, all you have to do is go over here and click into open chat. You can also click C or type in C, and you'll see send a message below to trigger the chat workflow. So we have simple memory that's set up. So it'll remember 5 because I didn't change this up, right? And then we're using OpenAI chat model. We're just using 4.0 mini and no options are set. So let me ask over here, what is the most popular Black Sabbath song? I'm saying that because Black Sabbath is playing their final show this weekend. It's a big bummer. I've never saw them live. I did see Ozzy, I think in 2018 when he toured the US, but never got to see Sabbath. But what is the most popular Black Sabbath song, right? So we're just going to ask this question, and even in 2023, should have the same result. And we get this output, right? The most popular Black Sabbath song is often considered to be Paranoid, released in 1970 as part of the album the same name. Paranoid is widely regarded for its catchy riff, accessible structure, helping it become one of the most signature tracks. Other notable songs include Iron Man, War Pigs, Sweet Leaf, but Paranoid remains the most iconic, enduring hit. Okay, so now what I want to do is add in our structured output parser. So I'll show you how this works. So let's say I want to do some research on songs, right? And let's go over here, and we'll have on this side of things is song, right? And we'll put whatever song name. Let's do a Metallica example, and we'll say Blackened, right? So Blackened. Okay. And then what we'll put on this side is, well, actually, let's change this up. Let's go into album, right? And for the album on Metallica side of things, let's say Master of Puppets. And then we'll say sales. And then we'll put in a number over here. Let's go over here and actually look up how many record sales Master of Puppets. Because I'm actually curious and I want to put the actual answer. I think it says like 10 million. Let me just double check. Okay, it sold 8 million at least in the US, but it says 10 million worldwide. I'm just going to put 10 million like this. All right. Shouldn't matter too much, but now you can see we have album, right? Master Puppets, sales, 10 million. All right, so that's gonna be our output parser over here. So now what I'm gonna ask on this side of things is, what is the most popular Black Sabbath album and its sales? It's worldwide sales. So ideally, right, we're going to get the album name on here, and then we'll get the sales if it follows the structured output parser. So we'll go over here and ask, right, it's going to go to our AI agent. It's going to also look at our output parser, and you can see it says album Paranoid, 4.5 million US and over 12 million worldwide. Now this didn't exactly work as I wanted, right? Because if we go back over here, I put 10 million like this, whereas we got the output response like this. So it did not work. And, that'd be something that I would want to prompt a little bit better. So maybe I want to write this over here. What is the most popular? And let's change this into, I don't know, let's say Judas Priest. Judas Priest album and its worldwide sales. Give me the exact number of sales as an integer, like that. Okay, and now let's try this here again. Also, one of the reasons, let me just put this over here like that. I think we're going to be in a better format if I just put it like that. Visually, it just helped me on that side of things. So just make sure that's there. Okay, so we have our output parser. And then I'm just going to ask, what's the most popular Judas Priest album and its worldwide sales? Give me an exact number of sales as an integer. Again, there's a lot you could do with prompt engineering, but we'll run that now. It's going to go through here. It's going to go through the output parser. Okay, so now let me just expand this out over here. And now we get the exact results that I wanted, right? British Steel, and this is album sales over here, right? So now we know that's working on that side of things. Prompting is a huge part of working with an AI, right? Like your prompts are going to be critical depending on what you are building. And there's a full skill set of prompt engineering and prompt frameworks. I've covered a lot of prompt techniques here on the channel, but that's with Python. I'll be making my own videos here with N8N with prompting tips and tricks for you guys as well. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the different chat model settings. So I'll just go over here and let's do something like temperature. Again, pretty basic to use that. So we'll go over here to sampling at temperature. And again, the higher you are, more random, right? So let's go to like 0.9. Let's say we're going to create some lyrics for a song. Again, just random use case. And obviously a lot of people don't like AI lyrics, but let's just say that. So what I'm gonna do is have a prompt and say, write me an Iron Maiden song. Write me a verse for a made up Iron Maiden song. Right, you can put that in over here. And then we have this in the shadow of the ancient spire, where echoes of the lost conspire, and the restless winds howl through the night, awakening the ghost of fight. I'm not going to read out the rest of it, right? That's an example over here. And again, we can take a look at some of the other settings on the side of things. So we could change the amount of tokens if we really wanted to. Again, you could also use something like a presence penalty or a frequency over here, right? So we have frequency penalty or the presence penalty. Frequency, positive values penalize new tokens based on their existing frequency in the text so far, decreasing the model's likelihood of repetition, right? So you can put that on the creative writing side of things. You can put like a 0.4, 0.3, right? It is a positive value. Again, we'll just do this as an example. Instead of Iron Maiden, we'll do Metallica. Metallica has a lot of stadium chants that they repeat words. So we'll say a made up Metallica song. Right, we'll put that in over here. It goes to the workflow. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all these, right? We talked about that. You can, again, change number of tokens if you want and different things like that. But again, just really depends on your specific use case. I also want to show you how this could work without having a chat message received, right? This is a super popular flow just to do some chat texting. Obviously, that's why OpenAI got extremely popular. But let's go through some examples without it. What I'm going to do now is disconnect this chat message, right? We're going to close this chat message over here as well. And we're going to add in a manual trigger. So I'm just going to click plus. We're going to go in over here to manual trigger and let's hook that up. So chat message goes goodbye. And then we have our manual trigger. So just now add this over here to like that. And okay, so now what we're going to have to look at on this side of things is going into over here, and it says source for prompt. Now you can see it says connected chat trigger node. That's what we've been using this entire time. So now we switch this over here into define below. So this is going to be your prompt over here. Now, one thing that's pretty cool on this side of things is you can actually drag and drop in things from previous nodes. Now, I don't have anything from my previous nodes, right? I just have an execute workflow over here. But just imagine like a workflow, right? Where you're grabbing like something from Google Sheets and then you're passing it into an AI agent and then it does something else, right? So you have those possibilities, or you can just prompt down below, right? So again, we could require this specific output format. We'll drag back in this output parser and we'll go back up over here and we'll copy this. So I'll just show you how we can build this in directly over here. So this could be a prompt. Let's change up the band as well. So instead of Judas Priest, let's use a band from the US that I listen to, which is Trivium. And we'll see how it does. Now, Trivium's a lot smaller than Judas Priest or Black Sabbath or Metallica, but I like Trivium a lot. All right, so let's just click over here to execute step. And what you'll see is our output's going to be defined over here rather than we've been using this chat, which looks really nice. But you can also see the output that we had for the lyrics were right over here too. So I'm just going to click execute step. And it says error in simple memory. And yeah, I need to remove that as well because we were going through a chat. We don't need this simple memory anymore. We just have a prompt coming in on this side of things, right? So we have our prompt. We're going to get into our chat model. We have our structure output. We no longer need our memory because we don't have this chat going on. So I'm going to go over here and execute this step again, and we should have the exact result. And have over here on the output, it says ascendancy, right? And sales over here, which I actually sold way more than I thought, right? That's 800,000 sales. Wow. I didn't realize it was that popular. I mean, I should have known it's pretty popular. But you can see also we have our JSON output, right? So our output is the albums, and sales kind of like what we defined. You also have a table over here, and you have the schema, right? And typically what you can do if this was over here, you could drag and drop. So let me show you that example over here. Let's pin something into our execute workflow. Just click this over here. So what I'm going to do essentially is drop in some schema like this. I just drop in some JSON, and let's just have our band defined over here instead. So like, just imagine we had data a little bit earlier, and then band, we'll have that, and we'll put over here as Slayer. We'll save that. Okay, so we pin this data, right? We have our information going in over here. And again, imagine you had other information going in before you had your AI agent, right? And instead of manually populating, right, our exact band, and then all you gotta do is drag and drop this in over here. And you can see it says JSON band like that, and it turns this into an expression. I'm gonna put this a little bit earlier. So what is the most popular? And we're gonna put band here, right? So again, like imagine you had a list, you kept going through it, right, and iterate through that on that side of things, but we're just doing a basic example. What is the most popular? And it says JSON band, right? We're grabbing the band over here, album, and it's worldwide sales. Give me the exact number, right? So we have the data from here. We're passing into our AI agent. We have our chat model that we're using. We have our output parser to get the specific JSON. We can execute this step now. And you can see rain and blood, right? And what is that, 3 million? So there is that on this side of things. So again, you could also add in tools if you want to do that. Maybe we'll do that as another video because there's just so many tools. But I think this should get you going, at least on the basic side of things, right? I definitely want to make a Discord tool, a Discord workflow in over here as well. But yeah, so essentially just to recap, again, just drag your AI agent in over here. By default, you're going to get this chat message to start if you don't have a trigger. Otherwise, you can set a trigger. You can also have additional nodes before it goes into the AI agent, right? Set your chat model. In this example, I used OpenAI, but you can use OpenRouter to switch out the models, use whatever model that you would like. If you want to have things in a specific format, right, use your output parser. If you're using a chat conversation, make sure to put in simple memory over here. And then also I showed you all these different properties, right? So again, like probably the most common ones you're going to use on this side of things is going to be your temperature, right? If you want to do a timeout or retries, that could be on that side of things. If you want to limit the results, right, number of tokens on here. And for like, if you want to do some fancy writing, right, you might want to do something like frequency penalty on that side of things. But there's that. And I think we covered quite a bit. Again, you can use multiple tools. You could use one tool. You don't even have to use tools. A lot of different options on there. But this should get you the basic idea of how AI agents work. In the next video in this series, we'll cover some of these different tools, and you can really see where AI agents kind of thrive. But I'll call it right here. Thank you guys for checking out this beginner video on AI agents within N8N. If you found it valuable, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We post a ton of different AI and data science content here on the channel, and I'm going to try my best to post at least one N8N video every single week. I'll put the playlist down below in the description. It'll be on the screen right over here as well. And final thoughts, if you want to join our Discord server, we have over 600 different members in there. That's going to be linked down below. And if you're a business that's trying to get started using some automations within it, I am taking on freelancing customers. I also have that link down below in the description. All right, I will catch you guys in the next N8N video.